Well, it's finally here. The major storm is underway. We've got a ton of things to talk about. The impacts from, well, three-quarters of the country is getting impacted by this storm in some form or another. And we're going to talk all about that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. And there's a risk for a flash freeze tomorrow, and rock salt could come in handy. If you can't find it where you are, you can find it at Omni. They have plenty there, along with all the great snow and ice melt products like Mag Ice Pellets and Flakes and Flitto. Of course, in time, you'll need snow blowers, shovels, spreaders, anything else. And with the winds, of course, there'll probably be some power outages, so make sure your generator's working or go get a new one. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com, and I got that in before you even had a chance to finish.
Yes. Ta-da. So I looked at the forecast this morning, and I was thinking about this, Joe. I should have bet you. Well, I should have bet you who would get to below zero first, because this morning they were forecasting. Now I'm at 2,200 feet. But I also found out, because I found a map that was detailed enough. So I live on Cook Mountain, okay, which is about 2,600 feet. Brasstown Bald is Georgia's highest peak. It's less than a 10-minute drive from here, and it's just under 5,000 feet. And the forecast for Brasstown Bald for tomorrow morning was a low of -6. So if it were to get to -6 at Brasstown Bald, I'm usually about 5 degrees in a normal atmosphere. I'm usually about 5 degrees warmer than they are, so I would be down around 0 or -1. And temperatures tomorrow not getting out of the single digits here in northeast Georgia. I would have if I haven't experienced today where temperatures have gotten out of the single digits since I went to New Hampshire in the middle of February back about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was only, it probably hasn't happened any other time really. Maybe on a couple of days it got close. So let's see tomorrow for me if that is the case. But let's lay that aside, because we've got a busy night tonight. A lot going on in the east. Heavy rain coming up from the south. We had some snow today in parts of Pennsylvania, even into northeast PA. A few people let me know that there was some sleet up in the Hudson Valley, not too far from you. I don't know if you got into any sleet or snow there. And we've got coastal flooding, strong winds ahead of this Arctic front, strong winds behind the Arctic front, and the flash freeze issue. So resolve it.
Where do we
start? Yes, where do we start?
Well, the radar right now. I don't think
I have it. I have it.
You have it?
I have it. It's always good that I could bring it up. If you're going to talk about it, I can bring it up on the screen. So give me 1 second here. I got a fairly wide view. So let me bring it up. I wish we had a couple of technical people that could do all the switching for me.
Would that be great?
Yes, it would, but that would cost money, and we don't have money. So anyway, there you go. Here is the radar. I'll give it a quick refresh so it's up to date, and it's up to date. So have at it.
Well, we're not seeing, up where I am, we haven't seen all that much in terms of rainfall. The rain began at 10 minutes to 1 o'clock this afternoon where I am, here in Putnam Valley. No, I did not see any wet snow or sleet. It has been rain right on through the course of the afternoon, but we've only picked up about 1/10 of an inch. But now I can see on the radar that there are a couple of bands of noteworthy intensity over central New Jersey. One, that is relatively short, but coming northward. And then there's a wider band that stretches from, western sections of Maryland on across southeastern Pennsylvania and through south central New Jersey, and that's heading northbound. So that in all likelihood is going to be coming our way later on this evening, and that's where we're going to see the heavy duty rains. And the NAM forecasted from 7 o'clock this evening to 1 o'clock tomorrow morning at LaGuardia, something like 1.6 inches of rain. So that may be what we're seeing now to our south and west. That may be the first round of what may be a series of heavy torrential bands of rain that will be passing on through. Could also very well see some lightning and thunder with this, and so that's probably the warm front. That is probably the leading edge of the milder air. Right now, here at the house, it's like in the upper 30s, but I fully expect when I wake up tomorrow morning it's going to be somewhere at or above 50 degrees. And we will start out the day tomorrow on the mild side. And then we wait, as you can see on the radar, off to the west in western Ohio and Michigan. There's another band of precipitation. That is the cold front. And that front will be moving on through around midday tomorrow. And what's probably going to happen, Joe, is we'll get a whole heck of a lot of rain tonight, especially from about 9 o'clock this evening, I think, to about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when it's going to be at its heaviest. And then it'll peter out. It may even come to an end by daybreak tomorrow morning. We may have several hours where there's not much going on in terms of precipitation. And then we wait for the cold front with a band of rain and or rain mixed with snow, changing the snow as that front moves on through. And then we'll see that sharp drop in temperature leading us into tomorrow evening. Could be a flash freeze situation. We got all kinds of problems coming our way in terms of precip over the next 24 hours.
One of the things I noticed is I mentioned this last night about the fact that the GFS had all this light blue snow, and that when you look on the radar, on the radar version, as opposed to it had the snow on the precip total version, but on the radar version, it didn't really snow. It didn't show hardly anything, and I was kind of wondering why. And then I'm looking at this right now, and I looked at some of the observations in Wisconsin, in eastern Wisconsin, in and around the Chicago area, down through Illinois and Indiana. Normally on the radar, when you got this sort of bluish gray, much of the time when I've seen that, it's when you've got precip aloft and not reaching the ground. The air is so bitter cold here that and so dense that these echoes are actually producing some pretty decent snowfall observations. Visibilities are down to 3/4, a mile. I didn't find any moderates, but the rate of snowfall there, the radar is a little deceiving because it would lead you to believe that it's not snowing hardly at all in that area, when in fact it is actually snowing at a pretty decent rate, and that is where the Arctic. There's a sharp difference on the temperatures, and I'll go through that on the hazards map in a moment. There's a sharp difference in temperatures from one side to the other. And here's a wide view. We also have got down in Florida right now some thunderstorms across the central part of the state, as that's part of this. It's actually a wave that's just east of North Carolina that is moving northward. And then, of course, you've got the big low that's going to be intensifying, and that is intensifying rapidly over the northern lakes. That's going to eventually just absorb everything and move this along. Yeah, I don't know what you think about this, but I was thinking back to in the 70s and maybe even in the 80s, we had a lot of instances where we had days where we would get rapidly falling temperatures during the day because some kind of cold front would have moved on through. That used to happen a lot in the 70s and I think in the 80s. And then it's in the last 20 or so years, Joe, we've had very few instances like this where we've had falling temperatures during the day in the wintertime. And so this is a throwback to how the pattern was back in the 70s. And for you snow lovers, I will tell you that pattern was not a good one. Okay, those were lean years from the 70s through the 90s, with just a handful of exceptions. So I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but it just made me remember back in those days. It was at least once every couple of weeks we'd have a situation where you'd have a cold front coming through and some sort of cold air mass dropping down, and you would have temperatures falling during the day. Uh, that doesn't happen much anymore.
You know, to get falling temperatures nowadays, let's say during the midday or afternoon, you would need the upper level winds to align themselves with the surface winds. If you get a let's say a good west or west northwest, or even especially a north northwest flow that suddenly develops by midday or afternoon, yeah, you're going to see the temperatures come on down. And even here, not like it was, or not like it has been in the past, the air behind this front is just so very very cold that even though the winds actually, Joe, the winds are going to be shifting from a southerly direction early tomorrow into the west southwest, not the west northwest or the north northwest, west southwest. And we're going to be seeing a west southwesterly wind flow from tomorrow afternoon through tomorrow night, through Saturday, and probably even into Christmas Day, Sunday. It really doesn't change into a what you would call a classic cold northwesterly flow. It's going to be west northwest, west southwest for several days, and that shows you that cold air is just winding up and around that huge low pressure area that's passing off to our north, and we're getting cold air on the backlash, but it's not coming from the north or northwest, but from the west and southwest, and it's a layer of cold air, as you pointed out. It's probably so densely entrenched down near the surface, and this whole area is just going to forcibly push in from the west, cross through our area beginning midday or afternoon tomorrow, and then just envelop us for later tomorrow, tomorrow night, and on into Christmas weekend.
And by the way, all that whole wind flow and the oddness of how this is happening, it makes a big deal for places in western New York, northwest Pennsylvania, Ohio, and in and around the lakes, particularly on the east shores, on the I'm sorry, the western side of the state of Michigan, where we're going to see these big lake effect snows, and also up in to the north on the upper peninsula of Michigan. There's a lot of things that are happening here that are you've got the broad sense where you're seeing impact, and at the same time you've got these localized areas that are going to get hammered for one reason or another. And of course, in Western New York, in the lake effect land where they had the epic snowfalls. The snowfalls this time around are not going to be anything like those snowfalls, but this time around they're going to get probably a couple of 1 to 2 feet of snow with 70-mile-an-hour with gusts to hurricane force wind gusts around this big low. It's a phenomenal system. They've already, between yesterday and today, there have been 4,000 flight cancellations, and you can rest assured there are going to be a ton more of them tomorrow. Here's the watches and warnings. Actually, they've expanded the blizzard warnings again for North and South Dakota. Now, there's not a whole lot of snow falling here, if at all, because when we look at the radar, you can actually see up in the Dakotas there's no snow coming at all. That's all blowing snow, and visibility's down to near zero.
Right.
So that's what that the blizzards are. The traditional definition is temperatures down below 15, and which they've got. In fact, a lot of those places have 15s with minus signs and lower. But it's about the wind, and it's about visibility, and the visibilities in a lot of these areas are near zero. We have blizzard warnings up for the counties that line Lake Superior, western Michigan, southwestern New York under a blizzard warning also. A lot of winter storm warnings because of the fact that it's a combination of snow, not a lot of snow. Most of these places in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, southeastern Missouri, and a few counties in north central Tennessee, they're not going to really see a lot in the way of snow, about what talking maybe 6 inches or less in most places, but it's the fact that they're going to be that snow is going to be blown around and restricting visibilities to under a quarter of a mile. That's going to be commonplace. You can't see the wind advisories and the high wind warnings. I have a high wind warning up for me in northeast Georgia. You can see the gold boxes there. A lot of these wind chill advisories are masking wind advisories up and down the eastern seaboard, and also we're seeing wind chill. Uh, well, wind chill watches, wind chill advisories, all along those lines, obviously. And the purple down along the Gulf Coast is for a hard freeze watch, which they have. Now, in the Northeast, flood watches up for much of New Jersey, down into into Delaware. We have high wind warnings up for much of New England, and where it's not a high wind warning, it's a wind advisory, and those go back to northeastern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley. Still some winter weather advisory continuing for the Catskills at the moment, and I think I got them all. The impact here is just phenomenal. Let's see him bring up a surface map. Take a look at this. By the way, while the map's coming up, big hellos to everybody on the chat board on this Thursday night, the 22nd of December. Hope everybody had a great day. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Welcome to all the lurkers that are watching. If you like the show, hit the like button, because Joe and I love it when you hit the like button, especially if we go to 100 likes, or maybe if we're lucky we get 200 likes. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, because we're on most of the time. It's Monday through Thursday at 7:35. Friday and Saturday we're off. Sunday at 11 a.m. But the difference is we will be on tomorrow night at 7:35. We will be off Christmas Day and also next Monday. So after tomorrow, we've got a 3-day weekend for everybody, and then we'll be back on Tuesday. So here's what it looks like on the surface. So you have a low in way up. Think about, Joe, think about what the models were doing with this a week ago today, and we wind up with a low. There were a couple of models that I remember the Icon was trying to take a low up into Wisconsin, and we discounted that about a week or so ago. But look where where the low wound up. There's a low up in northern Wisconsin. The pressure on that low is going to have to guess here, because they don't have the isobars marked. 2008, 1008, 1006. Oh, 1004. Okay, there it is. I finally found it. In northern Michigan, they wrote 1004 with the underline. And as you notice, Joe was pointing out on the radar, there's actually a warm front that's analyzed in southern New Jersey, and then arcing back to northern Delaware, cutting across eastern Virginia into a low in eastern North Carolina. And that low's moving northward. That's the impulse that's producing the rain. Of course, as that wave moves northward, the gradient here is going to tighten up, especially from from northeastern New Jersey, New York City, northeastward, where we're going to have winds going to the south and picking up to gusts up to 40 or 50 miles an hour overnight into tomorrow morning. And then, of course, we wait for that low and the Arctic front, which at 4 o'clock this afternoon was in western Indiana, western Tennessee, cutting down through Arkansas. It's pushed down through almost into coastal Texas. It goes all the way down. Here's the blue norther for the folks in Texas with that cold front as it was moving southward.
Yeah, and if you want to get back to the storm that's in North Carolina, actually there's a smaller storm that has been analyzed literally on the outer banks of North Carolina. And I would maintain that might actually end up being the primary storm system, because
Agreed.
I noticed, Joe, I noticed a few minutes ago when you had the satellite picture up with the flashes of convection. There was a lot of convection just to the east of that secondary, or that second low. Yeah, you see that big that little reddish blob that pops up there, and that may very well be in response to the formation of that secondary system, which may, and the benchmark of an intensifying storm are thunderstorms and convection. that may allude to the fact that second storm near the Outer Banks of North Carolina eventually is going to become the primary system.
While it's moving northward, I mean, eventually the lows around the low around the northern lakes will just consolidate it all. But the models do show a closed low, the coastal low, moving northward to off the New Jersey coast. That's what really helps to tighten up the gradient.
Right, and for places within, I would say 50 or 75 miles of New York City, don't be surprised if after midnight you see a few flashes of lightning or hear some peals of thunder. That could very well be that secondary storm now off of the North Carolina coast that's winding up and aligning itself with that upper low and intensifying. And that, folks, is probably why some of the models are saying that the most substantial rain is going to come during that 6-hour interval from approximately 9 o'clock tonight until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. In fact, I know that they had 1.6 inches from 7 o'clock. The NAM had 1.6 inches from 7 o'clock this evening to 1 a.m. And then they had an additional like 7 or 8 tenths of an inch from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. So if this all pans out, we're going to see some bursts of very heavy rainfall during the overnight, and probably after about 1 or 2 in the morning when the actual warm front moves on by, that's when we're going to see temperatures which currently are in the upper 30s to near 40 suddenly jump or lift right up into the 50s toward daybreak tomorrow morning and set the stage for a balmy start to the day. But again, once the Arctic front arrives by midday or early afternoon, things are going to be changing really fast, and those temperatures will be plummeting very quickly after lunchtime.
Most of New England is going to get New England. I think is going to wind up getting the most as far as rainfall. I mean, it's going to be generous rainfalls everywhere of 1.5 to maybe 2.5 inches. But in New England, it could be more like at most places will probably average at least 2 to 3. As all that moisture is just lifting up to the northeast. And I'm just checking here, just looking at some of the observations right now. So let's look at Chicago, which at 7:57 is actually this observation is from the Maritime Station that's out in Lake Michigan. So I really don't want to do that one. Let's go to Chicago Midway Airport, where the temperature right now is 2. The dew point is -5. The wind is 17 from the northwest, gusting to 31. -18 on the wind chill there, and they've got 1.75 miles in light snow. In Gary, Indiana, it's 1.75 miles in light snow there too. 5 above, west at 20. No gust being reported there. Just randomly picking a few places. Southwest Michigan Regional Airport, which is in Southwest Michigan, 20, 16 on the dew point. It is a moderate snow there, and not a surprise. West-northwest at 20, with a wind chill of 5. Going a little bit further to the south, you could see temperatures in most of Indiana, or you could, till they started to reload here because I moved the map. All right, come on, fellas. Just put the temperatures on the map, for God's sake. So just using the wind barbs, Joe, it looks, yeah, I know, really. Using the wind barbs, I would put the Arctic front looks like it's just now crossing the border here of Indiana and Ohio. The temperatures in Ohio are all in the low 40s. Looks like 41 is a popular number tonight at just about all of the stations. And the winds are mostly light southerly, under 10 miles an hour. And then you jump to the other side, and you've got west winds, and the temperatures immediately drop to the 30s, the 20s, the teens, the single digits, and beyond. So that's where your Arctic boundary is there. I'm going to just take it up a little bit further here.
It's interesting to point out that on the other side, the left side of the line that you've drawn for the front, winds are out of the northwest, but a lot is going to happen between now and this hour tomorrow night, a lot being the fact that we're going to have storm systems that are going to be intensifying to our north, really winding up, so to speak, and causing the circulation to come not necessarily out of a northwest direction as we see behind the front now, but again, coming in from a west and west southwest direction. Still cold. I mean, we're still going to see a significant drop in temperature here. It's just simply not going to be coming from that northwest direction, but more out of a west southwest direction. You might say that the cold air will be modified somewhat because of that trend more to the west southwest, but still it will be very cold or become very cold here later tomorrow and into tomorrow night.
Well, I'm looking at some of the numbers here where if we're going to take a trajectory across, say, Missouri and southern Illinois in terms of the cold air, they're all in the single digits and even a few places in the below zero readings down into southern Missouri. I mean, this is really impressive cold air that's coming down. The wind shift just happened in Cincinnati.
The Queen City.
Clean Cincinnati. 41 there with a northwest wind at 10. And then you jump to not too far away to the northwest in Columbus, Indiana, not Columbus, Ohio, Columbus, Indiana, 19, 2 miles in snow there. Wind is northwest at 22, gusting to 28. And bear in mind, the low that's driving the winds across from the lower lakes on south is with the Arctic front. That low is not really. It's got to go down to. It's going to get down to a 960-ish low. It's still only 1,004. So these winds are going to pick up. They're going to keep increasing as we go through the nighttime hours in a lot of these areas. Now I'm going to try to find the Arctic front down because it's approaching me.
Alfred Phillips, by the way, on the chat board tonight. He's up in Alaska, and he's saying right now where he is. It's 15 degrees, warm weather, Chukchi City Sea region coast. So he's warmer.
He's going to be warmer than me.
It's 15 degrees where he is in Alaska. He's already 10 degrees warmer than Chicago. And yeah, you're right. He's going to be warmer than you in the next 12 to 24 hours.
Yeah, there's the front through Tennessee. Everybody in western Tennessee now in the low 20s and even in the mid-teens in and around Memphis. It looks like it's now moved through northern Mississippi. So it ain't too far from me because I am right here. Okay, let me see if what station that 44 is. That 44 that's Blairsville Airport, Joe. 44 with a dew point of 40. Wind no wind is being reported. 52 was the high there. I didn't get out of the 40s today. 40 where I am. 41 was the low. I believe when I looked. Give me a second here. I'll just look at my thermometer. I'm 43 right now. So.
You don't look a day over 50.
Thank you so much. I'm many days over 50, many years over 50. So you get the idea here, folks. This is nasty cold air that's coming down. I want to go a little bit more to the northwest to take a look at some of the numbers where the cold is really impressive. For some reason, the map is not wanting me to go up to Iowa. And I don't blame them because right now in Marshalltown, Iowa, it's 11 below with a dew point of 17 below. West-northwest wind sustained 31, gusting to 37, and that works out to a wind chill of minus 41. That's hideous. Utterly hideous.
I'll tell you how hideous it is. But 40 below or minus 40 is the same both on Fahrenheit and Celsius scales.
Right.
So in a way, that tells you that it don't really matter what you're looking at. It's just plain blankety blank cold.
Webster City is minus 13 with the dew point of minus 18. They have a mile and a half in haze. Okay. The wind there is west-northwest at 29, gusting to 39, and their wind chill, it comes out to minus 43. I'm going to look up in Minnesota and see what's up there. Actually, some of the numbers up here are a little higher. Minus high single digits, low minus teens. But they're starting to see all their sustained winds off the wind barbs are now picking up to 25 and 30 miles an hour with gusts. If they're in the low 20s on sustained, the gusts are running in the 30s and some mid 30s gusts as you go down into the southern part of the state. I mean, this is really absolutely brutal air. Now, I forgot to do this last night, and I want to touch base with this because it's really important with this south wind tonight. When you get a south wind on a day where you have a new moon, and as a recipe for trouble, this is this is from Stevens Tech, and it's a really good tool to use because you can look up you can just bring your mouse over to all these stations and it'll tell you on the next tide what the forecast is in terms of flooding. I'm going to put the link up on the chat board when I get an opportunity here, Joe. But I'm seeing a lot of these stations forecasting a moderate coastal flooding. We've got a couple of them that are forecasting major coastal flooding. There are also a few that are minor, but the vast majority of these are moderate. Well, here's one, Barnegat Bay at Manahawkin in New Jersey, major coastal flooding forecast there. Arthur Kills at Staten Island forecasting, they have minor flooding now, and they're forecasting moderate coastal flooding at the next high tide. And of course, we have numerous coastal flood warnings up for this area, for Long Island, for the South Shore of Connecticut, going back in and around New York Harbor, and down through a good chunk of the Jersey Shore, either under a coastal flood warning or under a coastal flood advisory. So if you're on the shore, just prepare that you're going to at the very least get some moderate coastal south-facing shorelines are going to wind up seeing moderate coastal flooding when we get into the high tide cycle tomorrow morning.
Right, and this particular, I'm looking it up right now. The moon is going to be new tomorrow. In fact, the moon is going to be new at 5:17 a.m. But what is interesting is that let's see, just try less than 24 hours later, the moon is going to be at perigee. That in itself is not good news, because that means that this particular new moon is going to have probably a 30 to 40% more potent pull to the tides, as opposed to, let's say, a moon when it's at an average distance of the Earth, or when it's at apogee, when it's near the far point of its orbit. So this is like the perfect storm, if you will. You're getting a southerly component of the wind that's going to push all that water onto the south coast of Long Island and Staten Island, and not necessarily a direct push across the Jersey Shore, but for the south coast of Long Island, places like Freeport, for example. And now you've got the addition of the moon being closer than normal, and that means that you're going to have astronomically higher than normal tides, which are going to be accentuated by that closeness of the moon. So this next high tide cycle is going to be, as we just saw, moderate to even possibly major flooding. And let's not also forget that once those winds start cranking up, there could be some beach erosion problems, all kinds of problems that's going to occur. And again, this couldn't happen at a worse time. A new moon, a moon that's closest to the Earth, and a southerly wind. It really is just a bad news situation for anyone who happens to live close to or near the ocean shorelines tonight into early tomorrow.
I'm just checking some of the ones in southeast New England. They got Woods Hole, Massachusetts,
which is where, by the way, you can pick up the ferry to go to Nantucket.
Right. They say forecast is near flood. I don't know what exactly that means. So I'm just going to pass it by. And for Newport, they've got minor flood, but I think that's in reference to the high tide which just occurred. So I'm sure if we check this tomorrow morning, we're going to probably see, as they approach the next high tide, those forecasts will go up to moderate, because they're really exposed to the south wind in a big way here, the southeast wind in a big way here. But I'm not overly familiar with how the tidal situation works in southeastern New England, so I don't want to say the wrong thing with respect to that. I can just also let me just check. Let's just check here to see what's what's the situation in Boston. Do they have any kind of coastal flooding? Yeah, they have coastal flood warnings up for southeastern New England. Also, a high wind warning up from Rhode Island and all of southeastern New England. So the coastal flood warning is for portions of eastern, northeastern, and southeastern Massachusetts and northern and southern Rhode Island. So all of that area from 5 a.m. This was issued. This will be from 5 a.m. Friday to 2 p.m. Friday. So it's the next high tide that they're talking about here. And I'm looking at the terms that they got minor, 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 no moderates here. I'm kind of a little surprised, I guess, but they got all minors here on their forecast outlook. So I just want to make sure we pass along the correct information. So let's jump to let's just jump through the HRRR because because I'm a glutton for punishment. I said back a couple of weeks ago that I wasn't going to use the HRRR again, and here I am using it. But I'm going to give it a shot here because of what we're dealing with this Arctic front. And a lot of, HRRR is supposed to be really good with convection. It does look a lot like what the radar looks like to an extent, but we'll see if it winds up being the case. You see the rain overnight, and let me get that so you can see the time here. So this is at 1 a.m. and you see the Arctic front. Now I'm assuming, Joe, that you see that strip of purple.
That's snaky. That's snaky. Yeah.
That's got to be heavy snow. That's got to be a very narrow band of heavy snow behind the because you got the rain, then you have the light blue snow, and then they got this purple. So that's got to be a very narrow band of heavy snow that the HRRR is picking up on. That's moving across Ohio, eastern Kentucky, east central Tennessee. And as we go through the overnight and into the morning, so that first area of rain, here we are at 5 o'clock in the morning. The back edge, I'll just draw a line here. So there's the back edge. And then you've got a gap. So that's that pause that you're going to see for a little while tomorrow. And then, of course, you got the Arctic front that is going to be pushing eastward with that second area of showers and then eventually going over to snow on the backside. So the gradient overnight, again, fairly tight. Looks like, northeastern New Jersey, north and east into Maine. That lifts up. We get a break. The isobars are already bending southwestward here. So this is at 7 a.m., which is as far as this HRRR. This is the 0Z HRRR goes out to 48 hours. It's only out to 12. So let's go back 1 hour. Then we'll come back to this a little later because this at least will take us 5 extra hours. So this is at 7 a.m., 8, 9, 10, 11, noon, and the HRRR changes it over to snow in south central PA. Actually has some snow down there in northeastern Maryland, and a little, what's left of that snaky pink line is still there. So that would probably be a quick burst of heavy snow. Maybe it only lasts like 5 or 10 minutes. Then it swings east, and at noon, it looks like the Arctic front is right through New York City, western Long Island. It's off the New Jersey coast at noon. So why don't we just check to see what the temperatures are? Where's the 32-degree line? There's one thing I picked up on looking at this stuff today, Joe, is the fact that it looked like the colder air was moving a little faster. And now of course it's kind of slowed down. The 32-degree line at noon is in westernmost New Jersey. It's already at Atlantic City, so it actually turns colder faster to the south than it does to the north. It's already down below freezing in all of Maryland, the Delmarva Peninsula, except for the immediate coast, and except for southeasternmost Virginia, everybody there is below freezing. Now, you know what?
I mean, look at those. Look at those. The blue isotherms. I mean, look at them. I mean, you talk about a gradient on on isobars. These are isotherms. I mean, like at 5 degree increments, and
Yes.
you could see how this cold air is just literally just pouring eastward, and will, as I mentioned earlier, will simply envelop our entire area by the time we get to late tomorrow afternoon, and we'll be fully into it tomorrow night.
So I switched to the NAM 3 so we could keep on going. So this is noon. So 1 o'clock. The freezing line is on the Pennsylvania-New Jersey border at noon. An hour later, it's just southwest of New York City. That's covered a lot of distance there in 1 hour. It's flying eastward, and then at 2 o'clock, it's right over New York City. At 3 o'clock, it's into Suffolk County, and then at 4 o'clock, it's further into Suffolk County. At this point, New York City's temperatures, the 25-degree isotherm is at New York City at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, Joe, the 20-degree isotherm is at New York City. At 6 o'clock, at 7 o'clock, you got the 15-degree isotherm approaching just west of New York City. So it's a little slower in bringing it's a little slower than it was on some of the overnight runs. Now let's see the precip, because that really is the other part of this equation when it comes to a flash freeze. So the precip is so this is 10 o'clock. Let me roll it back. So here's the NAM 3 tonight. Of course, I mean, you look at the convection on the NAM 3, you would think the entire a tropical fire hose has been opened up on the northeast during tonight. That lifts up. You get that brief pause. Here comes the cold front, and you see the rain here at noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So you really, it seems to me, Joe, that by the time the precip cuts off, and you have at most say a 2 hour window before the temperature drops below 32. I would
Look at that band. Look at that dark, narrow band of blue, like literally going right down the Hudson River and ending just about at my house.
yes,
And
I
that would,
see that.
and you wonder whether or not there'll be some kind of a narrow line of heavy snow, or some kind of a squall line or something. And look at it; it gets even more intense as it moves up into the area around the Berkshires and lower sections of Vermont.
Hmm.
So this is loaded for bear, so to
Yeah,
speak.
very, and of course you see how the gradient is. So you're right. The wind is going to be screaming from the southwest. Those isobars are more southwest than anything else.
And
Uh,
look at the projection for lake effect snow.
oh yeah, I
That
mean
diagonal. That
it's crazy. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Once the low lifts up, the actual surface low, you see it there over in eastern Michigan. Once that goes north and then it actually pivots back northwestward, the winds in western New York go more west-southwest, and the gradient gets so super tight. Look at that streak that goes up from northeastern Ohio right along the immediate lakeshore up into southwestern New York. Whoever's under that is going to be, that's hours and hours and hours of heavy snow.
It cuts right through the Buffalo area, but it doesn't stop there. It extends outward for maybe another 100 miles or so to the north and east. So people who are away from Lake Erie, let's say upwards of like 75 or 100 miles, may get hammered for several hours by very heavy snowfall. And even the folks who live, even the folks who live, let's say, along the south central shoreline of Lake Ontario, may get into that snow band, again generated by a southwesterly or west southwesterly winds moving across Lake Erie.
By the way,
That's pretty good.
take a look. Take a look. There's another one like that up in northern Michigan from the Upper Peninsula out over Lake Huron. You see it there?
Yeah,
It's got a bowing. It's got a bow to it
right.
because it's shaped the way the isobars are shaped, and that continues. And the lake effect stuff that goes. Yeah, I'm at Saturday here. This is Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the last frame here is 1 a.m. Sunday morning. It's still going on in southwestern New York and in northwestern PA, and you still got those bow. I love the way that looks. That bow.
And
Uh,
you also got up near Watertown getting it pretty good on that southwest flow across Lake Ontario.
So not to neglect our viewers from the south, because we do have them. Because down here, Joe, when it's a lot of people get very excited that they're going to see snow, and they are going to see it in northern Mississippi. Seeing on the HRRR model, this is at 9. This is this is the map I'm showing up here is 9 o'clock. So it could be going on right now. I took the hazards map off, so I'll see if I can bring it up real quick. The bottom end of this kind of weakens. And look at that. That's right over me. All of a sudden, it gets a little enhancement of snow there, Joe, in northeastern Georgia. They brined the roads here today, believe it or
Smart.
not. They did brine the roads because uh, it's a narrow band of rain. The temperature drops very, very quickly below 32. It's still going to be precipitating here when the temperature goes below freezing. So any wet, all the surfaces will be wet. They'll have no time to evaporate, and then they'll ice up. And there you go. It swings on out to the northeast. Probably getting some of this is probably going to move. You see it in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia, western Virginia, and then it moves on by. And of course, the cold air just comes all the way down into Florida, where they've got they're going to have freeze issues in central and northern Florida out of this whole thing. So very, very interesting. I'm sorry that I didn't pay more attention to these things when I was younger. Now I can really appreciate it, that doesn't have to happen when it's sitting overhead, where I am, where I can see it. Although, I'd like to see some snow, but I can really appreciate the power here of this particular storm system. And here's the wider view, and we've got the HRRR out now to 20 hours, so let's see what it's doing here. And you see there's the rain and that back edge of snow. So it does look like it's going to change over, certainly in central and south, from south to north, in central and eastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, into the Catskills, probably to you. And the other thing is, because it's not out enough for the folks on Long Island that are watching, at least if this model is correct, it was doing this all day. Let's see if it's still doing it. I got to go back to the 18Z one, but I don't know where this comes from. But so this thing moves out, and you see there's rain all the way up into almost onto northern Maine. Something fires up here at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You see that little patch of blue that's over central New Jersey? All of a sudden, it blossoms out over Long Island during tomorrow's evening rush. That light blue. It doesn't last long, but you know what? If that's real, that's definitely going to whiten the ground at the very least, and make for some very slick roads for sure. So we're talking about travel before, and again, all of this going on a big travel day is not a good thing.
No, it's not. And once again, we say they can't brine the roads. They couldn't have brined the roads in advance here because of the rain, likely washing all of that away. And what can you do if only a highway department that's on the ball on Long Island, if you believe this computer, setup, after, let's say, 1 or 2 o'clock, they got, all right, boys, let's get out there. Let's brine. Why are we doing this, Chief? 3 hours later, boom, here comes snow. and if the roads are brined, good, then that hopefully will preclude problems. But if the roads aren't brined and you get what was just being suggested by the HRRR of even a little bit of light snow on the roadways, that's going to cause a very slick and slippery scenario on the northern state, the southern state, the LIE. And again, we stress, lots of people tomorrow afternoon and evening are either going to be A, heading for the airport, or maybe B, heading for a party. A lot of people are going to be partying tomorrow night. This will be the last night before Christmas Eve and a couple of days before Christmas Day. I mean, I know a lot of parties usually occur a couple of weeks or, in advance of the big day, but there may still be a few get-togethers that have been planned for tomorrow night. and this weather is going to make that very problematic. I love that snow map you just put up, Joe. Look at
Yeah,
Watertown,
Buffalo.
36 to 48 inches in Watertown, because that wind, that west southwest wind, will be coming over the length, almost the length of Lake Ontario. That's why you get that much snow. But Buffalo ain't going to be a shirker, with 24 to 30 inches anticipated from Lake Erie. Wow.
They basically doubled. They more than doubled the amounts that they were showing yesterday. This actually goes through 7 a.m. Monday morning, the 26th. So several feet, perhaps. And of course, Syracuse misses all of it. Rochester gets 4 to 6. Springville 12 to 18, Dunkirk 30 to 36, Ripley 18 to 24, Jamestown 4 to 6, and in northeastern New York, Pulaski 8 to 12, High Market 12 to 18, Watertown 36 to 48, Clayton 24 to 30. Let's check Ohio. Let's check Northwest PA and Ohio while we have this up here. You can see the blizzard warnings that are up for Southwest and North Central New York. So for the folks in Ohio, they are doing. Let's take a look.
And can you imagine losing your power in this type of situation? You lose your power in this, and call your local, electric provider like NYSEG. I think NYSEG is the one that does most of supplies most of the electricity to Western New York. I mean, what you're going to hear when you call them up and ask when you're going to get the electricity back, you're going to hear
a week from Wednesday at 1:10.
Well, not that bad, but I will tell you now, they're not going to send their men out in blizzard conditions to try to put up or take care of a broken line. That's for sure. So, people who live out in the western end of New York State, they're braced for and could be a miserable Christmas. You think Bing Crosby, he's dreaming of a white Christmas? Yeah, but he ain't dreaming of something like this. This
No.
is this is really bad.
So here's the look for the Northwest PA and into Ohio. So Cleveland is at 4 to 6. Elrya is 4 to 6. Chardon is 6 to 8. Ashtabula, Ohio at 12 to 15, and Erie at 12 to 15. So they are the west southwest wind. You can see how it just sort of cuts off, and it really picks up. The trajectory is much better for southwestern New York than it is for northwest PA. Much more favorable, I should say, because people will think if I mean better, that's a positive, and I don't want to sound. I'm trying to be neutral here. So more favorable for a heavier snowfall, but still not too shabby going into Christmas. This whole area here, even further inland, that is getting some impact. It's some of it's lake effect, and some of it is also the Arctic front. So those folks are going to have a white Christmas this year. WPC on their snow. This is the probability of at least an inch. So at least we could see if there's going to be any kind of surprise near the coast. And you still really have to go northwest New Jersey, north and west of Philadelphia, northward into northeastern PA. There's a fairly high 50% or higher probability of at least an inch. And then, of course, you've got the 100% probabilities that are going to show up everywhere else. And as we go through Saturday, you're going to see these areas start to slowly shrink down and become a little bit more confined to where the lake effect is taking place. This is Saturday morning into the early afternoon, and then we continue into the afternoon and evening, and then it shifts up. You get the idea, folks. It shifts up further north. And on the long range for WPC, starting from Sunday and going through next week, there really isn't much of anything going on snow-wise except up in the Pacific Northwest, which right there tells you a little bit about what the pattern is going to be evolving into later next week. So here's Wednesday and here's Thursday. So the east shuts down, the west sees activity picking up to an extent. But for the most part, once we're past Christmas and the core of this cold air mass goes out, we lose the connection to cold air from Canada for a while. probably
Right.
right through New Year's and maybe even a few days beyond that.
Right. I didn't check CPC. I just want to see whether or not, because you've been saying that they have been going for rather mild, if not downright warm weather, not just across our neck of the woods here in New York, but across much of the uh, United States. Now, on their 6 to 10
All
day
right,
outlook.
hold on. Let me get you to share so this way, while you're sharing, I can do a few things, like get a glass of water,
Yeah, I
among
was going to
other
say
things.
get a cup of coffee or whatever.
Right. You should be good to go.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Um, so let's show you the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. And you could see, folks, that just about everybody in the United States, the
Whoops.
contiguous United States, the 48 states, everybody is in one way, shape, or form projected to be above normal. The probability of above normal temperatures from coast to coast, with the highest. Now, here's the irony of the whole thing: the highest probability is in the area right now that is probably the most frozen. Right here, the above line for, let's see, I want to make note of what that is. I believe, okay, that's a 45 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90. Is this possible that this is either 80 to 90 or 90 to 100% probability of above normal from northeast Texas up through the central plains and then into the western and central Great Lakes, including the Chicago area and Milwaukee and Minneapolis. All of these places that are frozen solid right now. Presumably, if this is correct from CPC, we'll be seeing well above normal probability of warmer than normal temperatures from the 28th right on through the very first day of 2023, January 1st. And if you're in our neck of the woods here in the Northeast, we're up there. We're probably up in the 50 to 60% probability of above normal temperatures. And then if you're wondering about precipitation, well, let's see, precipitation wise, much of the country is going to be experiencing above normal precip, except maybe in New England and eastern New York and the New York area, which will be only near normal. But you start going west, and the probability of precipitation increases significantly. And look at this. I'm sure that this is what they certainly could use in northern and central California into Nevada. This is way above normal probability. So probably spelled out it's 70 to 80% for wet conditions here in this section of the country. And as we move beyond that, 8 to 14 days, we find that things are cooling off slightly to near normal here in the western U.S. But look at this now, the high percentage, the high probability of above normal temperatures now shifts everywhere. It looks like east of the Mississippi. You've got 80 to 90 or 90 to 100% probability of above normal temperatures for Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis. Well, not St. Yeah, St. Louis is right about here. New York, Boston, all the way down the coast to northern sections of Florida, above normal from the 30th of December through the 5th of January. A big turnaround from what we're seeing right now as we approach the Christmas holiday. And as far as precip is concerned, everywhere in the United States above normal in terms of precipitation, but especially so, again, over northern and central California, Nevada, and edging on into western sections of Utah. And again, this is a region right here that could certainly use all the moisture. Actually, be better if it were further south into Southern California. And La Nina suggested that, a La Nina suggests that this region would be actually seeing fewer Pacific storms and lower probabilities of precip. And yet here we have what I guess is an anomalous situation and an overall pattern of above normal over in the western part of the country. So, and also in the central part across the Great Lakes, Midwest, all the way down to the Gulf Coast, down to your area too, Joe. So, if you're if you're yearning for milder temperatures, if you're yearning for milder temperatures in places that are exceedingly cold now or will become very, very cold, you don't have to wait too long. I think by probably about this time next week, we'll begin to see a rather notable moderation in temperatures. And who knows, by the time we get to the end of the year, we might be looking at temperatures in our neck of the woods in the 50s, maybe, dare I say, perhaps even a couple of days in the 60s. So there you go. A brief chill down followed by a warming trend taking us to the end of the year and to the start of the new year 2023.
If there's no cold air, there's no cold air. I don't know about 60s, but 50s certainly not out of the question at some point down the road. And you sometimes in these setups you get the occasional backdoor front that winds up popping up at the last minute. So who knows? But I will say this: one of the things, and we're going to go back to the maps in a second, but one of the things that we seem to have been going through the fall months, that we get into these patterns that last for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they change to something else, and then they change to something else, and now they change to something else. So maybe that's what's going to happen. We'll be in a warmish pattern for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks at most, and then the pattern's going to change again to something probably not what we just had, unless the polar vortex starts to show signs of weakening again in the stratosphere, and we get another split like we did in late November, which set up the blocking pattern. But I'll tell you this, considering the fact, when you think about it, and I was talking with Bill Goodman, we were messaging each other earlier today. We have all this bitter cold. You have all this bitter cold air, and for the snow lovers that in the I-95 corridor who have already proclaimed that it will never ever snow again in the I-95 corridor. But you had a block, you have bitter cold Arctic air, and you couldn't. And this is all and all those areas are going to hope for at best is that maybe the ground gets whitened tomorrow with the Arctic boundary when it goes by, and that's it. That's all you got out of this big block that developed. And it wound up that the block was great for snow lovers in and around the Great Lakes because of where the trough was. And the trough was at 90 degrees west, not at 80 degrees west, not at 85 degrees west, but at 90 west. So you could have all the blocking in the world, but if the troughs and ridges aren't where they're supposed to be, it doesn't make a difference. And on that note, and on that optimism that I just expressed, let's go to, I'm going to switch back to the GFS. By the way, Leon Probitsky hitting Super Chat. Thank you, Leon. And also one other person hit Super Chat earlier.
Anthony Orr.
Thank you, Anthony Orr, for hitting Super Chat. Merry Christmas to both of you. And also, since we have people that come and go and maybe just joining the show now, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We're on Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11. But this week the schedule is a little different because we're going to be on tomorrow night at 7:35. We are not going to be on Christmas Day, and we're not going to be on Monday, Boxing Day, because Joe and I are going to take an extra day off since the weather's going to quiet down, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Approaching 200 likes, so if you like the show, hit the like button, because Joe and I love it when you hit the like button. I see Steve LaPointe is going for he set a goal on the chat board for 314 likes, I think it was. I don't know why he came up with 314.
He came up with 314 because at the time we had 314 viewers, and I guess Steve was suggesting that every viewer hit the like button, and that would have given us 314.
Gotcha.
I'm happy right now that we got 184, so we're that close to 200, and if we hit 200 likes, it'll be the third consecutive night that we've done that, which it's been a long time since we've done something like that, but I think we're about to do that tonight. And thank you to Anthony, not Anthony Orr. Of course, we thank Anthony Orr for hitting Super Chat earlier, but this is another Anthony, just plain Anthony, saying happy holidays to all as well. Thank you very much, Anthony.
All right, so we're going to lose the connection from Canada. This storm, you see it rotating around. We're looking at the upper atmosphere. It moves up into Canada. There are things happening in the Pacific that cause at least into Monday, we still have a ridge going up into Western Canada and troughing in the east. There's actually a diving shortwave that's coming over the top and diving down from Canada from Lake Winnipeg and going southeastward. The problem is, um, as the trough swings eastward, the problem is that this storm has literally sucked out everything out of the atmosphere. There's nothing for this thing to work on. So it's just more of an upper air disturbance than anything else, and it's not going to really do much in the way of precip. So that goes out. And at this point, as this thing is diving down and the trough in the east is pulling out, a trough in the west is dropping from Alaska down the west coast, and that pops up a ridge in the east at the end of next week and going into the weekend of New Year's. All the troughing is in the west, and again, there's no flow from Canada to speak of as far
Wow.
as cold air. Now we're at January 2nd, 3rd, and now as we move toward the 4th, 5th, and 6th, you start to get now this is not perfect, but it's better. You start to get a little bit of you start to reestablish a connection from Canada here. The model was also similar at 12Z earlier today. We'll see if it's right. We'll have to see if Mrs. Ann Sambles agrees. But now you start to get more of a connection here out of Canada. You've got the ridge in the west. So the Pacific North America Index, the PNA, is going to be positive. It'll go negative and then go positive. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? It had it positive for 16 days. So clearly, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case, folks, because we're going to have a trough in the west for a while. But maybe this is the kind of winter it's going to be, Joe, where every 2 or 3 weeks we're going to flip the pattern around and just go back and forth, back and forth. Because it does, most winters you lock into a pattern that lasts for a good 6 to 8 weeks. But so far, nothing seems to be locking in.
Right, and that's not if you're a snow lover, that's not good news, because what you're doing is you're hinging or hedging your bets every single time we do get that period of cold weather, as case in point we're about to see here for the next 2 or 3 days. You're putting all of your eggs in that basket. You're hoping that there's going to be some kind of a system that's going to be able to be a catalyst enough to generate some decent or significant snowfall. But if it turns out to be like what we're going to see over the next couple of days, where the only thing you're going to count on is an Arctic frontal passage and maybe a brief period of snow shower or squall activity, that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for, a major storm or a significant wave of low pressure interacting with that cold air. And once the cold air moves in and then moves out, and you're back to mild temperatures, then you have to wait another, week or two for another round of cold weather to come in. And you just simply do not have years or seasons with lots of snowfall in that type of pattern. The great snow patterns, the great snow winters of the past have been exactly what Joe Cioffi just mentioned a few moments ago, where you have persistent cold. And when you have persistent cold, then any little storm or any little wave of low pressure can work on that and bring you at least a few inches of snow. And sometimes you get a larger system that will bring you more than that. But if you have to wait, a week or two for another little wave of cold weather to come in, and then it's only here for a few days, that's the time you have to hope for something to happen. Otherwise, if nothing happens, you're blank out of luck
Yep.
for another couple of 3 more weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, I really would just I would just want the Pacific to I'd rather have that East Pacific oscillation be negative, where the Pacific, you get the ridge in the Northeast Pacific, because that really this is what happens when you have a negative East Pacific oscillation. You get cold air that spreads out all over the place. So without that, if there's going to be a trough in the west, then you have a positive East Pacific oscillation, which is not good for cold air in the for the most part in the U.S. except in the west. So once this is all played out, going into next week, you see that diver that comes down in North Dakota. It's got nothing to work on. So it goes out. Then the high just sort of settles along the coast. We warm up because there's no cold air anywhere except in the west. And now we're into New Year's weekend. So this is New Year's Eve, which looks dry. New Year's Day. That's when the models yesterday were trying to show some showers. I mean, you have a low that's coming out of the Gulf states. I mean, take a look at what's going on in and around the lakes. And a week from now, it's all rain, Joe, all the way up to Minnesota, Wisconsin, to the Canadian border, even almost to International Falls. It's all rain.
Right.
That's just how, when you have a trough in the west and a strong ridge in the east, if that's the pattern we're going to go into, uh, no, forget it as far as cold is concerned. And just going beyond that, because we know it's in fantasy land, it actually does get a little colder here around January 3rd or 4th in a strange sort of way. It looks like it mostly comes down out of eastern Canada. High comes down. There's like a 10:35-ish high.
Well, was that what you were alluding to with a backdoor front?
Yeah, and I didn't even look at this model up until this is the first time I'm looking at it. So this is like January 2nd. This front goes by. Well, this system goes by, and that seems to pull down some colder air because there's troughing off the East Coast. So maybe that's a way that it gets colder here. But you know what? You're not going to get any storms to come up the East Coast if there's a trough just to the east of you. And of course, that high goes out, and now you got something that looks like an inland runner up the Appalachians here at the end of the period, which is January 7th. You know what? It ain't going to be there on the next run anyway, so I don't even know why I'm wasting my time and wasting everybody's time looking at it. We know what the general flavor of the pattern is. I'm going to stick to what I said yesterday, which is we're going to moderate, and we'll have to wait for a period, say January 4th, January 5th, right after that. Maybe that's when we open up a window to see a pattern change to something else. And I'm not sure what it's going to be, but that's what I'm going to go with. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Couple of things on the chat board. Ruthless Goat says the great snow winters like 1977 through 1979 are gone, and then to emphasize the point, he put it in block letters, forever.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
I want to point out that in those 3 years, the 77 winter, 24.5 at Central Park. The big one, the winter of 78, 50.7. That was basically from two massive storms. Of course, the blizzard of 78, everybody who goes that far back will remember that. And then the following year, 1979, 29.4. That comes out to about 33 inches average for those 3 years. And you say, Ruthless Ghost says, we're never going to see anything like that. They're gone forever. And yet, I'm looking here, the winter of 2003, 49.3. The next winter, 2004, 42.6. This is Central Park snowfall, folks. The winter after that, 41.0. The winter of 2006, 40 inches. And then you say, oh, well, that's a little bit further back. Yeah, okay. How about try this on for size? The winter of 2014. You remember that? The Snowmageddon winter?
13, 14, and 14, 15.
Right.
Two back-to-back winners.
57.4 and 50.3. And we've had as recently as the winter of 2017-18, 40.9 inches. No, those great snow winters are not gone forever. They come along. They have been here a lot more recently.
They have always. See, this is the thing, Joe. I don't know. People seem to think that they've really talked themselves into this lie, because it's a lie, that when they were kids, it snowed all the time, and it snowed every winter, and there was snow on the ground from November to May. It's a lie, okay? All through the history of statistics, whether you look at New York City, you look at Philadelphia, you look at Boston, et cetera, there are the winters that you fantasize about are exceptions. They are not the rule. That has always been the case. Now, look, if you go way up, if you go up into upstate New York, if you go up into central interior northern New England, that's a whole different conversation. But if we're talking about the coastal plain, the winters, the active winters are the exceptions. They're not the rule. The rule is what happened. If you want to know torture, look at Joe and I know this. From 1970 to 2000, that's 30 winters, 24 of those winters were below normal snowfall in the I-95 corridor, and many of them were way below normal. And in fact, there were 5 winters in a row, 95, 96, 97, 97, 98, 98, 99, and 4 winters in a row, 90, and 99, 2000. 4 winters in a row where the snowfall in New York City, I believe, did not exceed 15 inches for the entire season. Okay,
Actually,
so
16.3, but that's
16.3. And there
yeah,
was one year, one of those years where it didn't snow the entire winter. The only accumulating snow occurred in a 30-mile radius that happened to be over New York City on the day after, on the first day of spring or the second
right,
day of spring.
right.
So no, you know what? If you're going to sit here and tell me that, yeah, those days are gone, based on what? I mean, seriously, based on what? I'm not understanding. This is the kind of winter we're having. There's nothing unusual about what's happening here. People are snow lovers are you're all out of your mind. The snow weenies are all out of their minds. They just really are. They're totally off the wall.
The other comment on the chat board from Michael Azera, pointing out that the blizzard of 1983 came in the middle of a very mild winter, so I don't think it matters. All it's got to do is to come together right. And you're right, Michael. You're absolutely right. Remember that very, very well. I was on WABC radio for a total of 28 consecutive hours during that storm. And like 3 or 4 days beforehand in that winter, which, by the way, was an El Nino winter, which, by the way, was the warmest El Nino winter in 50 some odd years. And you say to yourself, oh, we're never going to get anything out of this. There was count them, one outbreak of very cold air coming out of Canada. And it was almost like the Goodyear blimp. It floated down from Manitoba across the Great Lakes and ended up over the northeastern part of the country just as a moderately, I wouldn't even say it was a strong wave of low pressure. It was a wave of low pressure. And again, I mentioned this before. You don't need a big storm. All you need is a decent low pressure system to interact with a large mass of cold air, and you can have your major snowfall. And that's exactly what happened. The one time we had cold air that winter, it came with a storm coming up at the right time from the Gulf of Mexico. And even the models, we had the old LFM 2. LFM at the time, and the LFM was yelling for 3 days, big storm, 12 inches plus 12. And the morning of the event, it took most of it away. The National Weather Service of Albany and the National Weather Service in Boston took down all of their winter advisories. And if you don't believe me, I've got every single statement from those weather services because I kept them in a logbook. That was a memorable storm. And I had the deputy superintendent of the sanitation department of New York. The company I was working for, we had the contract and we had to tell the sanitation department to get ready for significant snowfalls. And that morning, the deputy superintendent called up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and they had 2 services that they worked with: a private service, us, and the National Weather Service. And he already read that they had lowered the accumulations in New York, Joe. He calls me up and he says, I understand the storm is going to hit us as hard as it was supposed to. I want to let a lot of the guys free. Translation, I don't want to pay these people overtime. I want to save some money for the sanitation department. And I told this guy, his name was Walter Hines. And I said, Mr. Hines, I honestly must tell you that I really don't think we should do this just because this latest computer run said has backed off all of a sudden that we're not going to get this big storm. It was S plus, Joe, from Philadelphia to Toms River at 8 o'clock that morning. And here's this guy telling me that he wants me to lower the accumulations and wants me to say, yes, take away some of your men so we don't. And the guy really got angry. I mean, and in fact, he threatened. He said, I told him, I said, let's wait until the next computer run at 11 o'clock. Let's wait just 3 more hours. And the guy said, I swear to you, if this doesn't work out the way you're suggesting now, I'm going to personally see to it that we're going to have your contract canceled. This is the Sanitation Department of New York. Guess what? 3 hours later, the LFM said, oh, really? I said that we weren't going to get that much? No. Well, let's go back to what I've been saying for the last 3 days, 12 inches plus. And sure enough, like a wall like a wall at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This area of S plus came into New York City and sat over us for about 12 or 18 hours. We ended up with like 22 inches of snow. I mean, that was, and again, that was a winter that overall was very warm. We didn't have very much of anything, but that was the storm that hit at the right time when we had that one shot of cold air and gave us that. They called it the megalopolitan blizzard because everywhere from Washington to Boston, 1 to 2 feet of snow. Philadelphia, I have a statement, a special weather statement that came out as a post-mortem in the aftermath. And whoever was doing the forecast in Philadelphia, he headlined it with, "This is one you're going to tell your grandchildren about." I think Philadelphia had something like 25 inches of snow. So in a way, Michael Azera is right. You just have to have the storm come at the right time. And who knows? Maybe we'll be disappointed all through the rest of December and January and February. And who knows? Maybe by late February or early March, when everybody's throwing the towel, we'll have that one shot of cold air coming down just as the storm is coming up, and that'll nail us for a heavy snowfall. We'll see.
Whatever will be, will be.
Yes.
I have no clue. You have no clue. Nobody has a clue. Everybody can pontificate all they want about all sorts of stuff, about, this, that, or the other thing. It doesn't matter because none of us know much beyond. In general, we probably can figure out a 5 to 10-day stretch, maybe a little bit longer than that. But after that, stop. Just stop.
And by the way, on my wall here in the back, there's a framed from the front page of the Miami Herald. And it is all about that big February 1983 storm and mentioned constantly through that particular article in the Miami, because of course everybody in Miami is so happy. Oh, thank God we don't live in New York. They had 20 inches of snow, whatever. But Walter Hines, the guy that lambasted me that morning and said, "You better be right or else," he was mentioned in that article innumerable times. And underneath the article, I have the letter that he wrote to me saying, "Oh, didn't we do a great job? Well, fantastic job. Thank you so much." And because he was mentioned in that article so many times in Miami, he called himself at the end Limelight Walter Hines. So all of that, he went from rah, 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 to me that's like, "Hey, Joe, what a great job we did."
Just a second here. Just to correct something, Joe didn't say that we were going to have a brutal January. Joe said that because I know I didn't say it. Joe said that at some point this winter he thought that we would see a really cold blast of air come down into the Northeast. Am I correct there?
Correct.
Okay.
And you know what? We have what's happening now could very well recycle. It may take about a month or so, but we may have another round of very frigid air come down, just as I was alluding to in the middle or latter part of January. And also, if that be the case in January, it might even be a touch worse or a touch colder than what we're about to experience here in this latter part of December.
Right.
So,
and Bill Urber, by the way, reminded me. Thank you, William. But you were just talking about general and winters. The winter of 2017-2018, which was a much above normal winter, produced a couple of very big snowstorms that year in the east, and it just that happened to be one of those winters where it was the temperatures were above normal, but the cold air came. I think we had 2 blockbuster snowstorms that year, and the cold, including the one that was the one in February where it was close to 80 degrees the day before. Remember?
Right.
In the middle of February, Newark set an all-time record high and got to 80, and the next day it was 19 with blizzard warnings up. So that year was a strange year because it only snowed. You would get these short periods of cold. And it would snow during those short periods of cold. And then as soon as it was done, within about a week, the snow was all gone because it had warmed up. But then you get another shot of cold air, and then you get another round of snow. So, winters are all different characters. And by the way, folks, remember, the world does not revolve around each of us, and I'm including ourselves here. The world does not revolve around your zip code, okay? So remember that there's weather that goes on in the Northeast and that behaves in a certain way. There's weather that goes on in the Southeast and that behaves a certain way. We had a very chilly fall here, very cold fall, certainly a cold October into November. Then it got warm, and now it's I may go below zero here. So that's what makes this fun. There's there's always something different, and that's why I don't like to get into these conversations that eventually just sort of find their way into the political climate conversation, which I'm not going to have on this program because that's not what this program is about. So
And
let's just leave it at that.
Raymond O'Hara, historically, many of the best snows in the New York area have come in the first 2 to 3 weeks of February. Actually, when I was doing the weather at that private weather service for the sanitation department, we told the folks at the sanitation department we have what we call the snow window. And you could look, and Raymond O'Hara verifies this, from the 5th of February to the 19th of February, some of the biggest and most potent snowfalls in the New York City metropolitan area have occurred during that 2-week time frame. And Joe, we mentioned that I'm suggesting that there could be another round of frigidly cold weather mid or late January. Now I'm going to stick my neck out again because you mentioned that period where we went from very warm to a blizzard in a matter of one day. I will say right now, let's make sure that we're recording this. We put this on tape. I think that before the end of February here in New York City, we're going to see temperatures reach 70 degrees.
Okay, say that again.
Before the end of February, we will see temperatures in the New York area hit 70 degrees. And don't give me don't start yelling at but don't start yelling at me. Somebody on the chat board, well, you said it was going to hit 70. If it got to 67 or 68 in February, don't start yelling at me and saying, well, you were wrong. You said 70. I mean, like, I'm talking about a real way above normal,
right?
As opposed to January, which is going to be.
There's not an over/under game, a betting table going on around here.
Exactly.
Okay. And a lot of this stuff has real impact. Chris O'Shaughnessy mentioned on the chat board about how in 2018, because of 2 snowstorms in January of 18, which was a warm winter temperature-wise, and he had sad to say that he had his mother's funeral delayed. I remember it for a couple of weeks. My grandmother died in February of '96, and the ground was frozen, and then they had to wait to the spring to bury her. So yeah, remember, folks, this all has impact. It's all fun and dandy with snow and cold weather and everything else if that's what you like, but just bear in mind it's got impact in other people's lives. All right. So, and it's not always good.
We never had that problem when my grandmother died, by the way. Not the fact that she died in May, but because she also, instead of burying her, they put her in a crypt. So it could have been December or January. They just opened the door and slide her in.
Yeah. Christina Pedia says something. I think it's funny. She says everyone's saying you guys were wrong, and it's true. People tell you you're wrong before the actual weather actually takes place that you're predicting. She says everyone's saying you guys were wrong before the weather even happens. So the same people who put their credit card in the machine the second they walk up to the register before they've been rung up. I will just tell you, Christina Pedia, I used to be one of those people that used to stick the credit card in, but I would wait till the person was ringing me up, was in the process of ringing me up, and I would put it in the machine just to save time. But I don't do that anymore, okay? Because I was well brought up, and I don't want to, cause a problem. I certainly never did it to somebody that was ringing it up. I don't think I ever did it to somebody while they were ringing it up. I would do it if I was doing on a self-checkout. I might stick my credit card in before I was done, but I don't even do that anymore. So anyway, someone said Timothy Veltman says someone said it was that he heard for Boston to reach 60 in the winter in the 70s. Turns out it happened 22 times. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, Tim. It's a little clear how you wrote the first part of your sentence there. Someone said it was you heard of for Boston to reach. Oh, it was unheard of. I got it. Someone said it was unheard of for Boston to reach 60 in the winter in the 70s, and it turned out that it happened 20. See, and that's why I'm saying, Joe, for a lot of people that say this sort of stuff, it's fantasy. They make it up. They don't. They have no clue. He said it turns out that it's reached in the 70s in Boston during the winter months 22 times in that decade, and new more days in the 50s. Even the 70s had see even the 70s had winter heat. So yeah, this is not there's nothing new here. Okay. The only thing that I will say that's new, that's different, is that we do get more blockbuster storms now and fewer nickel and dime storms. I've been saying that for a while.
Right.
Joe and I have been talking about that for quite a while. We don't get nickel and dime like we used to, but we do get more big ones. Okay, that's definite. The rest of it's all horse hockey, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, we're past 9 o'clock. We haven't done a show past 9 o'clock in a while, and it is just getting past my bedtime. I want to get up early tomorrow morning because this front is coming through here at 1 a.m. And if it's going to snow, I want to see it. So I'm going to go to bed early, and I'm thinking the wind, because I have a high wind warning, is going to wake me up. So we will be back tomorrow at 7:35 Eastern time to probably wrap up all of this, because it should be in some areas it should be winding down, except around the lakes. So tomorrow night, folks, 7:35, and then we go into Christmas weekend, and then we will be after that. The next show will be on Tuesday. So I'm saying good night. Oh, before
And
we
I'm
do that, hold on. Before we do that, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. So make sure if you need rock salt or any kind of snow melt products, you head over to Omni. Give them a call, 631-756-1125 for the best prices anywhere. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com, and I'm going to say good night as well, or reservoir, everyone.
nighty night. Nighty night. There, nighty night.
Night.